phases of scholarly research, this book will introduce them to the core skills that constitute the writing of a thesis. Finding an important and intriguing topic, being thorough, taking pride in one's work, giving thoughts time to develop, identifying with a subject, and being resourceful in locating information about it. That is exactly what this book did for me as a student and young scholar. How to Write a Thesis was first published just as I was beginning to think about writing my own thesis, and it was from the Italian edition of this book, titled Come si fa una tesi di laurea, that I learned how to choose a topic, how to look for sources and prepare a bibliography, how to use my library's research systems, how to organize and prioritize information, and finally how to write a captivating and professional dissertation. It remained an indispensable reference source to me for years, long after I had defended and published my thesis. When I began working at the University of Rome, I recommended it to my own students. Many professors in Italy today still refer their students to it, and many university websites in other countries quote long passages from the book as part of the protocol for students to become familiar with before they write a thesis. And yet, when I moved to the United States in 1993, I was not sure whether it made sense to bring How to Write a Thesis with me. Moving one's library to a new place always involves questions about one's future priorities. I distinctly remember taking up the book, turning over a few pages, balancing it in my hand, and hesitating. Things were changing quickly. Eco's methods of organizing and filing information were still effective, but word processors and the Internet were beginning to offer exciting alternatives to long-established research and writing techniques. Use colors, Eco insisted, when marking a passage. Use abbreviations to emphasize the relevance of information. Use abbreviations to designate the passages you must reread. Supplement the underlining with adhesive page markers. Did this kind of advice still make sense? Moreover, the country in which I was going to live was the one where the standardization of research methodology and citation style had been codified as early as 1906, with the publication of the first edition of the Chicago Manual of Style. Eco himself may have been inspired by the profoundly renovated 12th edition of that manual. Published in 1969, it sold more copies than the first 11 editions combined. This was a time, in the United States as well as in Europe, when higher education was undergoing significant expansion. How to Write a Thesis sanctioned an extensive diffusion of the humanities into society. It was a momentous transformation, as Eco recognized in his introduction to the book. Today, the Italian university is a university for the masses. Students of all social classes arrive from a variety of high schools. An unprecedented number of young people were enrolling in universities to pursue the study of literature, history, and philosophy, often lacking and failing to acquire the cultural background necessary for careers as teachers, professors, editors, and journalists. Eco was aware of this predicament. As a university professor, he knew that the majority of students in Italian universities seldom attended classes, that very few of them would continue to write and do research, and that the degree they eventually earned would not necessarily improve their social conditions. It would have been easy to call for the system to be reformed so as not to require a thesis from students ill-equipped to write one, and for whom the benefit of spending several months working on a thesis might be difficult to justify in cold economic terms. But Eco did not believe that education belonged to an elite, or that it should lower its standards in including the non-elite. He understood that the writing of a thesis forced many students outside of their cultural comfort zone, that if the shock was too sudden or strong, they would give up. For him, it was about tailoring the challenge to students' needs and capabilities, but without giving up thoroughness, complexity, and rigor. If students' interests and ambitions could be met, while the limits of their sense of security were stretched, education would be achieved. Writing a thesis, Eco wrote, requires a student to organize ideas and data.